Welcome to the Parish the Thought Show. The opinions of Brian, your host, and his guests have not been sanitized or scientifically tested, so please consume at your own risk. Now, here's Brian.
Ladies and gentlemen, and whoever else is listening, welcome back to the program. My guest today is Jill Burgon. She is a certified social worker and has a Master of Social Work and Human Development. Correct? Welcome, Jill.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
And you're here today because you're doing a pretty cool thing in Portugal this summer, correct? You're sharing.
Yes.
This is kind of a new
yes.
thing that you're doing, right? That's big in the world. It can change the world. So tell us about that.
Yes. So I am attending the International Conference for Adoption Research in Porto, Portugal this summer, and presenting some research that I've done on adult adoptees, emerging adults, and kind of finding out more about what their outcomes are, those that have experienced adoption early on, and what are we seeing in their lives now that they're grown-ups.
And what was it that made you go get more school for that?
That's a very
lovely, yeah.
What's the
drive?
question.
What's the genesis behind that?
Yes. So I went back to school in my 50s because I decided I wanted to know more about families. I wanted to understand more specifically about adoptive families. My husband and I have one adopted child and two biological children. And in hindsight, there's lots of experiences that we weren't prepared for. We adopted in 2004, and at that time there wasn't a lot known about best practices, and for parents there wasn't a lot of studies or research to help parents understand that is a different family structure and it needs different types of parenting. And when we were raising our family, there wasn't a lot of support. So I think after the kids were grown, I thought, I just want to know what happened. I wanted to.
Are you trying to write the manual that you wish you would have had?
Yes, exactly.
Basically?
Exactly. That's a really good way to put it. Yes.
So isn't the thinking that, yeah, you don't know what you're going to get with an adopted kid, but you also don't know what you're going to get with your own. Is there, in terms of challenges,
right?
Is there an equivalent, or is that BS, or is that real?
The idea that raising an adopted child is by definition going to be different from a biological child. Is that the question?
That's a good way to sum up what I just dribbled out. Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's typically the way people think about an adopted child, is especially one that's being adopted right at birth, is I'll just bring them home and love them, and there's no difference aside from biology, and they have also connections to other people that need to be managed and understood. How do you navigate that? But other than that, you would expect, okay, it's just going to look the same.
It's a human. Just plug it into the system,
yes.
And it'll all be okay,
yes.
right?
Yes, that's
not so much.
That's the expectation, right? That's especially without a lot of understanding or preparation. That's just the way most adoptive parents go into it, with a lot of chutzpah and we're going to be able to give this child what they need, integrate them into our family, and just raise them as if they're our own, and it'll all work out.
It's kind of like the naive young couple. It's like, love is all we need, right?
Yes.
I think the Beatles wrote a song about that too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, love is all we need.
Yes. Yeah. So that's the expectation. And I think also in your question was the is it different? Is that right? Like, is it different?
Well,
How is it
I
different?
guess comparing the two that you biologically brought into the world versus the one that you adopted, how different was that?
It was different, and in ways that we didn't understand what we were seeing. Children who've experienced the disruption of the attachment to their mother, even if it was only the 9 months that they were in utero, there's still an expectation in that baby's experience of knowing the mother that they are going to stay with that person, that they're going to meet the voice they've been hearing, and the all of the sounds and her hormones, everything. They're symbiotic relationship until birth, and then the baby is expecting to stay with the person they already know, and then it's disrupted. They're in a state where their nervous system is developing all those connections and wiring, and so to disrupt that creates a lot of fear, and the nervous system gets really set off. And so a lot of times what we see is children behaving, they have more sensitivities and they're more dysregulated. So, for example, about 70% of children who are adopted are diagnosed with ADHD. And part of what we think we're seeing is they have a dysregulated nervous system, that it's harder to calm, that there's more need for parents to understand how to do that, how to parent therapeutically in a way that they can help them regulate. And they know there also can be, what we're seeing can be coming from grief and loss, that the child is grieving and is experienced a very painful event that's not often, very rarely acknowledged. And usually the opposite is happening, where they were celebrating this union into a new family, and we have a lot of celebration when we're not really recognizing this child has experienced probably one of the most significant traumas that a person can experience, a separation from the biological mother.
And there's no way for that little human to voice that.
Yes.
So it's all buried and subconscious and all these things.
Yes. Right? Yes. We were just talking talking about this with my husband recently. An example of this, when we would get in the car with our son, who was adopted at 2, and take a drive, especially if it was a longer drive, the entire time, like every 2 minutes, he would be asking, where are we going? Are we there yet? Are we going? Where are we now? And there was no ability for him to settle down and just look out the window. Never. And so for us, it was confusing, and we were irritated or annoyed, like, why is he doing this? And so we try to distract him or have some way of helping him get to we just couldn't wait to get out of the car. And I didn't understand until recently, of studying how to be an adoption competent therapist, that children who have experienced a traumatic event, and for him at 2 years old, we went, picked him up and drove. And we drove for hours. And so I would have never put those two things together, that being in the car for him was very triggering. And I didn't know how, to connect with him and help him and through that experience.
So how do you interpret that anxiety or whatever it was he was going through? Was it a fear of, I've got to prepare to get torn apart from my comfort zone or my parents?
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Well, I think...
how do you even know?
I think it's just from the body response. So all of if we experience trauma, it's more a sensation or a body response than logical. We want to figure things out, but and know why a child is doing something, but it's more the child doesn't know why they're doing it either. It's just that visceral response to something that feels threatening that they don't remember, whether they recall it or not.
So is this the research that you've done, or your thesis, or what you went to school for, and what you're presenting? Is this groundbreaking in the world? I've heard rumors that you may be onto something that's.
I think it's exciting. It verifies a lot of what we're starting to learn about what helps in family processes and the way families raise children with early adversity and what can help. And so the study that I did helps us understand that better, of what can parents do to help an adoptee have the best chance of having outcomes that are more positive.
So this event you're going to,
yes.
Tell us, give us a sample of what you're.
Okay.
Since I won't be there. Probably most of my audience won't be there, but you never know. Maybe I have a listener in Portugal.
So the study that I'm presenting has to do with, like I mentioned, emerging adults. So between 18 and 30 years old who were adopted. Many of them were fostered first and then adopted. And so we're looking at what's their experience like now. And so in that group of about 150 adoptees that were in the study, we parsed them into different groups depending on how close that they felt to family, friends, and a significant other. So there was a low, medium, and high group. And so then we looked back and looked at the way that they perceived their upbringing and tried to see what were the predictors of them being in those groups. So what the kind of the exciting thing to come out of it was those that experienced the greatest closeness with not just their family, but also with friends and a significant other. It didn't matter if they were at what age they were adopted, if they were fostered first, if they had the same race of parents, some of the things that we would think would matter and make a difference. But it was a particular family experience, which was open communication about adoption. And so those that had that experience were families, parents, and siblings. It was open to talk about if they had questions about their birth parents or birth relatives. It didn't necessarily mean that they had to have contact with them, but that they could talk about them openly, that they could wonder about them without being afraid of hurting their parents' feelings, that they could kind of wonder aloud and have mom and dad, bring it up and talk often about it and normalize that experience that being adopted has a lot of gains, but it also has a lot of losses, and to be able to talk about that. So the outcome that we saw was significant, that it was kind of astounding that those that experienced the most belonging as adults, if they had open communication when they were in that family growing up, they were 40 times more likely to be in that group of close belonging. And that was pretty much the only significant related factor that predicted being in that group was how open their communication was. And it wasn't just, they're twice as likely, but 40 times more likely to be.
That's kind of a big deal.
It's a big deal.
When your son was growing up, was that a common conversation? Did you talk about it, or did you wait till he was older? That's
a very good question. We did not talk about it very much.
Were you counseled not to, or was that just kind of the general thinking in the world?
We just went by kind of our gut feeling. We did have an open adoption where we had contact with his birth relatives, and so that we had an open in that way, but often We didn't want to emphasize the difference. We didn't know how to bring it up, when to bring it up. We didn't know what we were seeing that it was related to this. When, like I was mentioning, if he's struggling in a long car ride, I didn't know that that might be something related. So being in the dark, and you mentioned we just didn't say much about it. And then you mentioned, were we counseled? We sought out counseling. We sought out help, all growing up, his growing up, but basically no one ever counseled us. Like we weren't able to find, we went as a family, we went with him. We tried to find someone who was a adoption competent therapist, and could not find that in Utah County.
So what did you do?
So I went back to school, I think mainly to study and figure out what are best practices. And at the time, I didn't know that there was such a thing as an adoption competent therapist. While I was in school, I was very interested in learning more about how do we serve adoptees, because adoptive families and adoptees seek mental health care at 3 times the rate of other people. So we see this population a lot when we're working as therapists. So I was very excited. I thought in school I was going to learn more about how to serve people who are having this experience. And we did not cover it in school. So I went out to find more about what training is available and how do you become an adoption competent therapist.
It's like I couldn't find the tool, so I will become the tool.
Yes.
Basically, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's a good way to put it, Brian. What I landed on is there's a big push to train therapists now in adoption competency. And this has just started in the last decade, where the Department of Health and Human Services has given a grant to a really large grant to an agency in Maryland who's done a lot of research. It's called the Center for Adoption Support and Education. They developed a curriculum for therapists because they could see the need. There's so much overrepresentation of adoptees in residential treatment and prisons, in addiction recovery. And there's just such a need to support them better. What we find in the research is early support, helping the whole family understand the family processes that are needed, can prevent a lot of the difficulties that adoptees face. So it's not just that myth or narrative that it must be that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, or, the adoptee is the problem. It's more the whole experience themselves is kind of set up in a way that there's challenges that are just not being met. So this agency that I was talking about has come up with trainings for therapists, and they're seeing really good outcomes with families who are able to access services from adoption competent therapists. So when I was in grad school, I learned that there's a free training that's offered through the Center for Adoption Support and Education. So I went to a professor and said, will you allow me to do this as an elective and invite anyone else in my cohort who wants to join? And so we can all take adoption competency training while we're in school before we go out and serve as therapists. So he said that would be fine. And we ended up having about 15 in the class. And so everyone that finished that curriculum had at least the basic level of competency in adoption training. Then after you receive that and after you're practicing, then you can take a much more in-depth training that's also offered by the same agency. And that is called Training for Adoption Competency. It's a year long. I'm in that right now, hoping, to finish and get my certification in that. But the outcomes from that are really positive. And it's exciting to me because it was, like you said, something that we were looking for. And like a lot of adoptive parents, cannot find those needed services. So a study just came out about the effectiveness of the training, and some of the statistics are really exciting to me. It's some of them, or some of the statistics are that those clients that received services from an adoption competent clinician reported 98% satisfaction versus those who didn't see a clinician with any training. And comparatively, that was 22% of feeling like it met their goals or their needs. And they also said in what ways the family improved. They reported stronger bonds in the family, improved parenting strategies, better behavior, emotional outcomes, and academic functioning for their kids. So it just makes a really big difference in adoptive families. And I think that's exciting to share with people. I think for those that are raising adopted children or in part of an adoptive family, a birth family, a kinship, caregivers, foster families, this impacts a lot of people, and that there's more specific help available.
Do the parents and the kids just feel like they're not so broken and feel more at peace with,
yes,
or at least understand, maybe just understanding why they're struggling is a massive win.
Yes. I think, yes, it normalizes the experience, because I think I often say that it's like if you assume that you're driving a car that's powered by gas, but it's really an EV, and you keep putting gas into your EV and it's not working, it feels broken. And then having this understanding, like the light bulb go on, oh, I'm driving a different car. I'm driving this adoptive family. I'm driving an EV, and I know now how to plug it in and how to, get out there on the road. And it just normalizes the experience.
Which, it's the unknown that of most things that freak people out.
Yeah.
Is the not knowing, right?
Yes. And that fear and anxiety in parents is often what exacerbates all the issues, is when parents are so afraid that they're getting it wrong and they're seeing these big behaviors and they feel so helpless in it, then it affects the whole family when there's not that confidence that the parents feel.
I think there should be some motto about parenting that says, parenting, getting it wrong since 2000 BC. Just lead into that,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because it's just normalizing getting it wrong.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. So tell us about this conference you're going to. Is it an annual thing? Is it a new thing? Is it always held there? And how'd you find out about it?
Oh, that's a good question.
And were you invited? I heard you were invited to this because you've got your studies and your papers are making a ripple in the world. Is that right?
Well, I'll tell you the backstory. I went to a conference in the summertime where it was a gathering in the United States of adoption researchers. And so we studied for a whole week and were trained by the best researchers in adoption. And as an adoption researcher, that was where I presented the preliminary findings for this study. And couple of the researchers told me about the ICARS conference. So
what's that stand for? ICARS?
International Conference for Adoption Research. And it is held every year. And it happened to be in Portugal this year. And they highly recommended that I attend and share the results because it's a study that just is, the outcomes are very supportive of what can be helpful in practice. So what helps therapists, what helps families. It's so I think that is why the results are needed to be published and to be presented because it's very practical, it has practical application.
So you do all this work and all this research, and this is where my brain just went.
Mm-hmm.
How do you protect I know the scientific world shares things. You share things, and how do you protect what you've done so someone doesn't steal that and claim it as their own?
Right.
Is there a way?
Yeah. Well, I should mention that I did this study during graduate school at Brigham Young University. And so my advisor, professor, is Gordon Lim, is also an author on the study. And when you present at a conference, this conference, they give you an opportunity to publish in a journal. And so that way you're able to publish it with, all the authors' names on it. And I suppose people cite you so that they attribute it to you. And yeah.
You'll be one of those footnotes.
Yes.
You'll be a footnote in history.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I know we were short on time, but what is your hope for what you're doing in the field you're in, and ideal outcome looks like what?
Yes, that's a good question. My hope is that as many therapists as are interested in this get trained so that we have a broader, I think of it like the fence at the top of the cliff rather than an ambulance at the bottom. That people understand this issue and families can have access to the resources that they need, and to keep doing research and therapy myself and helping other families who are in the trenches.
And I may be doing this completely out of order, and you may have told me this, but is this a concern? All the concerns you have, were they unique to you guys, or is this other therapists were like, yeah, this is a big challenge throughout the world? Or you were just the only one that decided to learn how to do it and become the tool?
Yes, like I mentioned, the families that are struggling with this, whether they're a birth mother who's experiencing extreme depression because she's, placed her child for adoption, or a grieving grandmother had a grandchild relinquished, or you're an adoptive parent struggling with a child with big behaviors, or any other, or the adoptee themselves that are an adult now and trying to grapple with, why do I have trouble in my relationships? These people are seeking out help more, like 3 times more likely to be seeking mental health services. And a lot of it is rooted in this early experience that's not well understood by therapists. Most therapists spend like 5 minutes in grad school learning about adoption and its impacts. And so, yes, it's really needed. And when we're finding that the therapy makes a big difference, adoption competent therapist sitting across from them who understands the experience and knows how to help them, it makes a big difference.
Fabulous. Thank you for coming and sharing that.
You're welcome.
I appreciate. And then, how do people reach you, and how do they, if they wanted to, can this conference be zoomed into, or is it something that has to be attended, or how do people reach you and learn about what you're doing? So the conference itself is probably pretty boring to most people because it's academic research conference. We're going to go to a math conference. That's sexy.
Yeah. But, and then all the research just goes into journals. But when it's translated, where it's translated and where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, is in the therapy office. So anyone who is listening who thinks, oh, yeah, that's my aunt. They have adopted children. They're struggling. What do I do? I would encourage people to look for an adoption competent therapist and ask questions before seeing a therapist about what do they know about it and what was their training. And some of them I've mentioned, the NTI or training for adoption competency. Those are kind of the gold standard. And I work at Anson Family Counseling. They just opened an office in Orem And they have been doing great work with adoptees for a decade, and they do a wonderful job. And that's one reason that I sought them out and wanted to, when I heard that they were coming to Utah County, I was very excited to join their practice, because they get it and they train everyone who works with their clients to have that lens of adoption specific work. And so I would recommend them or other agencies that have adoption competent therapists.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you again for listening to The Parish the Thought Show. We know you have many podcast options and appreciate that you have chosen us. If you love what you hear, please give us a rating on whatever platform you find us. And don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. If you hate what you hear, only tell us. You're still here? Click on the next episode for more from The Parish the Thought Show.